Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Jalil Hart, the K-12 director here at the Institute, and we're thrilled to have you join us for this important conversation, STEM and Quantum Readiness, Building Pathways in Emerging Technology Through Education Policy and Partnerships. For those joining us for the first time, the Hunt Institute was founded by four-term North Carolina Governor Jim Hunt, and we're pleased to serve as a nonpartisan resource for policymakers nationwide. Across the prenatal to post-secondary continuum, we support leaders through convenings, technical assistance, and research, always with a focus on strengthening education systems and expanding opportunities for all students. Today's conversation comes at a really pivotal moment. Strategic investments in emerging technologies like quantum and artificial intelligence are reshaping education and workforce needs and demands. States have a critical opportunity and, frankly, a responsibility to align policy, expand partnerships, and build equitable pathways that prepare students for the innovation economy. Before we begin the important conversation, just a few notes on some logistics. We'll start today's webinar with a moderated panel discussion, and then we'll move into audience Q&A. So feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit questions to our panelists. The session is being recorded, and we'll make it available on our YouTube channel shortly after the webinar. And we encourage you to revisit this conversation and share it with others in your networks. And if you'd like, you can also join the conversation on social media using hashtag #EdHomeroom. So with that, I will turn the conversation to our moderator, Dr. Kayla Lee, who will introduce our speakers and facilitate the conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you to the Hunt Institute for inviting me and our esteemed panelists to have this very timely discussion on actions, best practices, and opportunities to build pathways in emerging technologies. For those who aren't aware, my name is Kayla Lee. I lead our IBM Quantum programs. I've been at IBM for the past 7 years, and I'm really excited to be joined by our esteemed panelists today. We have Dr. Brianna McIntyre, the Director of Research at NACME, Sam Maguse, the State Science Supervisor and STEM Lead at the Colorado Department of Education, and Herbert Drayton, the board member for the South Carolina Quantum. Each of our panelists have a unique point of view on the importance of these investments and how we can use technology and policy to strengthen these opportunities. To start our conversation, I'd love for the panelists each to do a quick introduction highlighting who they are in their current role. Let's start with you, Herbert.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Herbert Drayton. I'm based in Charleston, South Carolina, and I am a board member and treasurer of SE Quantum. Our mandate from the state with the investment that they gave us was to engage industry, academia, and the general population at large to educate them on the value of quantum and how quantum will play a role in our economic development moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome. Dr. McIntyre?
Good afternoon. I'm the current director of research at NACME, and in this role, I'm responsible for our commission research projects such as mapping the quantum landscape of research centers and institutes, as well as our internal program evaluation of our programs that support undergraduate engineering and computer science students.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome. And Sam?
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I'm Sam Agus. I'm the state science supervisor in Colorado, and my role is to support the implementation of standards as well as other legislation and governor's initiatives, as in the case of quantum. So thank you for having me today.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome again. Maybe let's start with you, Dr. McIntyre. To level set, can you explain what quantum is and how these technologies might transform the workforce? Why is it vital for states to act now and align education and policy in these fields?
Thank you for that question. Quantum information science is built upon the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics. While COS is used as an umbrella term, the technology span a variety of quantum applications, including quantum sensors, quantum networking and communication, and quantum materials. According to McKinsey & Company, these technologies have broad implications in finance, drug discovery, hardware manufacturing, clean energy, and secure communications. But COS does not create a single quantum role. It creates a new ecosystem of roles from technicians and engineers to software developers, technical sales and marketing professionals, data scientists, applied scientists, and educators. One of the clearest findings from my national mapping work is that quantum requires expertise across physics, computer science, engineering, chemistry, material science, and the biosciences, to name a few. States that understand this interdisciplinary nature will be better positioned to create a broad and diverse workforce. We've also observed how the ecosystem spans sectors, states, regions, and international borders. Over the past few years, we've also seen strong examples of state leadership in quantum, including work represented by my fellow panelists today. Colorado's teacher externship program is helping educators build competency in quantum-related fields. South Carolina supports the South Carolina Quantum Association through state budget appropriations to grow its regional quantum economy. Texas has launched the Texas Quantum Initiative to coordinate research, education, and economic development. And several other states have introduced bills to incentivize CAI's activity. And just last week, California announced a new statewide quantum initiative to build connections among government, higher education, and industry to ensure California's economic growth and sustainability as a leader in quantum. And even though I didn't name them, Maryland, Illinois, Connecticut are also other states that are key players in this space. While the federal government has played a major role in establishing research and development infrastructure in CAIs, it is still predicted that quantum jobs will not be filled. Research centers and institutes are beginning to address this gap by integrating education, outreach, and workforce development programs into their portfolios. However, the landscape remains fragmented and largely undocumented and has not been systematically evaluated at scale. By acting now, states ensure their regions are competitive in these technologies that will define the next generation.
Awesome, thank you. And thanks for that broad overview of what places are doing, both from a statewide perspective, but even different industries and research centers. Urbit, maybe to dive a little deeper, can you talk about some of the effective strategies and cross-sector partnerships between education, industry, and research centers, specifically those that are assisting South Carolina in developing a more responsive and future-ready STEM pathway?
Sure. You know, one of the things that we did in South Carolina was we prepared a grant we prepared for an NSF grant. And while we did not get the grant, you know, that actually produced 30 organizations across not just South Carolina, but our adjacent state partners in North Carolina and Georgia. We had 30 organizations, and that spanned academia, industry, and many others across the sector, where we put together about 135 million in value-add services towards an initiative to introduce quantum to those across the state. We had several initiatives that we implemented going into universities and educating academia on the impact of quantum computing and how it could affect what they were doing positively. We had conversations with industry partners, talking about projects that they had on the table and how quantum could be a force multiplier with the work that they were doing. And then, most interestingly, we went into the middle schools. We worked with the middle schools to introduce quantum to those folks. They enjoyed it, they embraced it. And then I would say the last thing that we did, we introduced a quantathon similar to hackathons. We were on our second year with that. We had over 100 students from 7 countries represented, with the grand prize being a trip to Saudi Arabia to participate in the international quantum hackathon that's going to be held next year.
Very cool. And how are some of these resources being shared across partnerships within research centers and institute? Like, how do you make sure that you're learning throughout this and even sharing some of those resources?
Yeah, I would say at its core, our partnership with IonQ has been instrumental. Interestingly enough, my son just reminded me a little while ago. We actually visited. We were on Wall Street when IonQ got to ring the closing bell. He reminded me that their stock price at the time was $25 a share. They rose to $80, and he walked out and said that they're now at $60. But you play the quantum space just as you would with any industry. It is a long-term play. So we partnered with IonQ to provide access to the hardware for folks, for the students when they came into the Quantathon. We also provided them with I think it was a 4-hour course to introduce them to quantum. You know, at the hackathon, they were mostly freshmen, so it was their first time being introduced to quantum computing. One of the projects that they did was to predict tornadoes. This is work from some of the scientists, and these folks spent 24 hours engaged in the Quantathon. You know, one team, they refused to stop working. When it was time to eat, they assigned an individual to go and get food for everyone else to bring to the rest of the group. We also worked with where we introduced quantum in partnership with robotics. We worked with a company called Van Robotics. And Van Robotics, actually, it's an academic platform using a robot. We actually created a curriculum for Van Robotics to introduce quantum computing to folks using their robots.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing. Are other people able to also use that curriculum? Do you know?
Well, you know, we didn't draw any geographic boundaries around the platform. You know, one of the things that was interesting is that we engage entrepreneurs, who are not just focused on bringing quantum to the folks in South Carolina. We were able to, like I said, we engaged adjacent states. And with Van Robotics, they've got customers across the United States, so that we didn't restrict them to who or which state could be educated. So we just we gave them the ability to introduce this platform, introduce this technology to their platform, and wherever they have customers, we've encouraged them to push this education out to those communities.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. And Sam, let's shift gears to talk about education departments. What responsibilities do you think they have in developing clear pathways into these high demand STEM careers? And how specifically has Colorado worked to solidify these opportunities for students in quantum?
Thank you for that question. I think that primarily state education departments, state leaders play a crucial role in ensuring that students have access to high quality STEM experiences, as well as access to equitable economic outcomes, whether that's in STEM fields or outside STEM fields. And so one of the elements that I think has guided our work here in Colorado in terms of aligning policy in this emerging space is the Colorado K through 12 quantum blueprint. We worked collectively across agencies, as well as with some organizations in the private sector to come up with shared vision and shared goals around what we want this to look like for students, and then some concrete goals for educators as well. And so I think having that shared vision is also just so core in ensuring that we're all moving in the same direction. I think that one other element that plays an important role, particularly here in Colorado, is that Colorado is very much a local control state. And since quantum as it is now is not a law and it's not explicitly mentioned in state standards, although it is a crucial governor's initiative, my work is really to build trust and relationships with districts because they have the option to do this or not. And so we want to create a value proposition and help them understand how this can benefit students and benefit their district while also benefiting their state. And so to some of the points that I've already heard Dr. McIntyre and Mr. Drayton mention, we're working across sectors and across agencies to try to make this happen. And so one of the elements that I'm most proud of is our collaboration with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment with Kelly Reeser, who is the admin of the Teacher STEM Externship legislation and program. I have to give Kelly a shout out. She's done excellent work getting educators into authentic experiences with quantum across Colorado. And the experiences have been incredibly flexible to meet the needs of educators locally and make sure that we're doing, what those educators need for their context and their students. And most recently, a STEM teacher externship, we've placed, at least for now, maybe more on the horizon, but 3 Colorado educators in an externship with Wolfram. And they're going to be using Wolfram materials with their students, and we're working together to craft some high quality experiences, as I just mentioned, but also some performance assessment materials that align with a lot of the work that our agency has done with the Learning Policy Institute to craft the Colorado K through 12 science and technology workforce learning kit. And it's essentially all of this to say quantum is just one piece of a larger strategy where we're trying to really align the K through 12 work with the workforce elements and context across our state. And I loved hearing Dr. McIntyre, you say that this interdisciplinary approach, that's really the core of the approach, particularly in K through 5. So I'm really excited to be here. And thanks again for the question.
Thanks. And then maybe one follow-up question. You mentioned that teachers have to kind of opt in, and so part of your role is building trust. What are some of the challenges you've had there, and how have you overcome kind of like building some of that trust? Because I think that's something that we all face when it comes to public literacy around quantum, just general education. It might feel like a more foreign science. So how have you built the trust, and what kind of challenges have you faced?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that it really comes down to listening and thinking about what kind of pieces of an initiative like quantum can bring value to the existing work of a district or a system, rather than positioning the work as something brand new, particularly in those lower grades. Let's use this as a novel frame to strengthen some of the conceptual pieces that we know to be crucial. So when I've talked to local educators as well as professionals in quantum, what I hear a lot of is we want to make sure that we're providing high quality STEM opportunities where students can develop transferable skills, right? Like problem solving, even things like sticking with a task, even when it's hard, right? Like that productive struggle of having to figure something out. These are all transferable things. And I think that although there are some elements that we can distill down commonalities across maybe what districts are looking for, one of the challenges is that districts have their own set of local initiatives, right? Their local boards set these things. Even in Colorado, local boards set their own graduation requirements. At the state level, for instance, we have graduation guidelines. So I say all of this that a challenge can be, on one side, the lack of standardization in some ways, right? Different locations, different humans need different things. But I do think that it does bring richness to the work, because it allows us to really be thinking deeply about the complex landscape, right? Like this emerging quantum QIST, I think, forgive me if I said that wrong, but it's really exciting. And I think that we just have to lean into, like, it's okay to not know exactly what it's going to look like yet. We have to listen to teachers and build that trust.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Dr. McIntyre, you mentioned that quantum is frequently linked to physics, yet your work emphasizes this interdisciplinary aspect. In what ways can policymakers and educators broaden their perspectives on the fields and disciplines related to STEM and quantum learning?
Yeah, so quantum information science is often linked to physics because it is the disciplinary foundation for this field. However, through my work of mapping the national landscape of quantum research centers and institutes, it became clear that quantum advances in the workforce required to sustain them depend on expertise across a wide range of disciplines. This project was launched to map the Quantum Information Science and Engineering, or CISE, Research Center and Institute ecosystem across the United States. As part of this work, we examined partnerships, funding streams, education and outreach efforts. And over time, we expanded the study to track state-related policies and degree completions in CISE-aligned disciplines. Through this work, we observed that while physics and its subdisciplines are core drivers of quantum innovation, they represent only one part of the larger ecosystems. Other disciplines contribute to quantum research and workforce development, including computer science, chemistry, mathematics, biology, material science, biostatistics, optics and photonics, biophysics, nanoscience, earth and environmental geosciences, and information science, to name a few. And that list of disciplinary backgrounds came from observing the people that represent these research centers and institutes. The landscape also spans multiple branches of engineering, such as electrical and computer engineering, industrial and systems, mechanical, molecular, chemical, bioengineering, and nanoscience and nanoengineering. For states, recognizing this interdisciplinary nature means that they can leverage existing strengths across their higher education systems to build quantum capacity rather than starting from scratch. This means preparing students for quantum cannot be siloed into physics alone. States will need to develop interdisciplinary pathways that reflect the breadth of CISE-aligned fields. Our analysis of degree completions show that both lead and partner institutions offer these programs, demonstrating that a talent base exists. However, they may need targeted support to build capacity in quantum information science. Educators and policymakers can broaden their perspectives by learning from existing efforts to expand quantum information science and engineering. For example, the Institute for Robust Simulation features the University of Maryland's minor in quantum science and engineering through their electrical and computer engineering department. It's intentionally designed through collaboration across multiple departments, such as electrical and computer engineering, physics, computer science, among others, to ensure students across diverse academic backgrounds are prepared to enter the quantum workforce at different entry points, such as a technician. They can also learn and build upon efforts from the National Q12 Laboratory. A team of experts have developed resources for integrating quantum into computer science, chemistry, and mathematics. And so that links into what Sam was talking about, how we can build upon the the areas in which students are already engaging in the classroom at the K-12 level. These resources highlight practical entry points for teachers to introduce CISE content in ways that align with existing learning goals and Common Core state standards. Expanding quantum education requires educators and policymakers to view quantum as an interdisciplinary and global ecosystem. When we broaden who we think as quantum, we can expand who can see themselves in the field and expand who participates in the future workforce.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I definitely agree. Being able to hear multiple of our panelists mention that we don't need to start over. We've been doing a lot of exciting things in STEM over the years, and so being able to layer quantum information science on top of that makes it even more exciting. Herbert, maybe we'll go to you. So I know that Colorado, Illinois, and Maryland have prioritized investments in emerging technologies like QISE, or Quantum Information Science and Engineering. And South Carolina is continuing to distinguish itself as an emerging leader in the space. Are there policies or initiatives or investments or partnerships that you think have been most effective? And how might other states apply those models?
So I'll answer the last part of it first. I think from a policy level, legislators need to support experiential learning platforms. Here in South Carolina, we developed Q Lite, which is an interactive learning platform for quantum. And we've, as I said earlier, we've introduced that to the middle schools. I think Dr. McIntyre mentioned a number of verticals where quantum plays a role. I said, you know, I didn't hear cryogenics in pharma. And I will say, as someone who worked on high-end imaging systems, nuclear medicine, and cardiac cath lab, I automatically picked up on how quantum could play a role in diagnosing heart disease, cancers, tumors, and that type of stuff with those platforms. So that's one of the reasons why it was easy for me to engage. We actually work with one of our universities here in South Carolina, Coastal Carolina College, Coastal Carolina University, where they had a STEM program where they awarded one college credit, and we got them to enhance that platform. We got them to enhance that curriculum, and now they offer 3 credit hours of coursework for that particular platform. And we were obviously supported by the legislature. I will also say that one of the things that we did was we were very intentional about not just engaging industry and academia within South Carolina. We looked at introducing quantum as a regional project as opposed to just a statewide project. That, you know, for us, there were no geographic boundaries. We reached out to folks in adjacent states and simply asked, do you want to be a part of this? And that resulted in us creating a separate entity, because we were not allowed to use state funding cross borders. But we just created a separate entity where we now have a framework for a partnership that allows us to work in a collaborative way to introduce quantum to our various communities.
Very cool. And maybe I'll ask this question to everyone. What are the challenges that prevent states from strategically investing in quantum talent and technology? Be interesting to hear different points of view based on your current roles.
I'll go first, since I think my answer is quick. I think lack of awareness. I think particularly around within academia. What we found is that a lot of folks in academia, they've heard about quantum on the fringes, but because they don't have use cases where they can align their current body of work with quantum, it's somewhat of a struggle. One of the programs that we have is an education series where we would actually go into academia and educate them what is quantum, and then we would ask them, well, what projects do you currently have right now? And I use in the pharma space, I'll stick with the pharma space. If you're running you're working with therapeutics, you can actually accelerate the research around the therapeutics if you use the quantum computing. And we had to go in with use cases to help them understand that, to hopefully bridge the gap between what they can do and what they think they're doing very well right now.
Dr. McIntyre?
See, all right. So I think some of the challenges that that states may experience difficulties with are centered around certain communities that are historically lack access to advanced STEM programming due to geographic resource or infrastructure limitations. And so that's where some of the research centers and institutes through federal funding have been able to expand those types of opportunities. And such as one powerful example of an educational opportunity that intentionally includes rural learners is sparking curiosity in quantum science. It's a mobile quantum laboratory, and it's led by the Center for Quantum Networks. And so while some states have not taken the lead to make investments, whether it's financial investments or through policy, some of the research centers and institutes have taken the lead to ensure that their states have that access to this knowledge and applications.
Thank you. Sam, anything to add there?
Thank you. I think that one thing to consider in a state role, as I find myself in right now, is that we really have to be responsive to legislation and or governor's initiatives. So I think that one of the challenges, or I guess limitations of my role, is that I can't make anyone do anything, and that's probably good that we have laws and things, right? That people can't just willy-nilly sort of implement or tell people you have to do it this way or that way. And so I will say, though, that we are grateful that the governor has like tried to really spearhead a lot of the work and move some of it to some private sector, like Elevate Quantum, right? And I think that the other element that we find ourselves in at the state level right now, no surprise, is funding. Unfortunately, we're in a budget sort of shortfall, and right now we are doing what we can to support districts. But I think the other sort of practical piece is that even if there was a law that passed in Colorado that said everybody had to teach quantum, one of the challenges is just that there's not a lot of instructional materials that exist right now. So we want to make sure that we're setting people up for success. So that's one of the things that we're trying to support as much as we can. Although Colorado, we can't just make up materials for teachers, right? We try to support them in creating materials that suit their content. So some regulations and funding, but we're finding a way to keep the work moving forward. So thank you.
Very cool. And then maybe one more question for the group. How do you envision the current landscape of QISE evolving over the next few years? And what actions do you think states might be able to take to establish a strong presence, and especially those states that maybe aren't as actively engaged? We can start with you, Dr. McIntyre.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question for me?
Sure. I just asked about how you envision the current landscape of QISE evolving over the next few years, and maybe what action states could take to establish a strong presence.
Yeah, so I would like to see, let's see. I would like to see the amplification of the role of HBCUs, HSIs, and tribal colleges. So they often play a partner role, but they also in some cases play a lead role in quantum information science and engineering. And so we have different notable exemplars like the IBM HBCU Quantum Center led by Howard. Winston-Salem State University has the Quantum Education Collaboratory. And UC Santa Barbara's Quantum Foundry and Edelman Center for Quantum Innovations and Innovations for Hispanic Serving Institutions. And they serve as partners in broader regional or national quantum initiatives. But it would be great if we had additional state support for initiatives like the Yale Quantum Institute, where Yale themselves have invested in partnerships with other HBCUs for like the Ascend KAIS program. And these programs expand pathways for KAIS students, research collaborations for faculty, and teaching fellowships for course development. And some of these initiatives are actualized through multiple phases that include the general public, not just undergraduate students and faculty. And so I would envision that the states would invest into additional opportunities like Ascend KAIS, as well as almost a state version of the Expand KAIS that's implemented through the National Science Foundation to expand opportunities to quantum information science and engineering.
Very cool. Sam or Herbert, anything to add there?
I'll be quick since I saw Sam was muted. I think it's the industry readiness. There's reskilling that has to happen, the tech maturity, and then legacy systems integration. Right now we're in this AI phase. As I often tell colleagues, yes, we're having robust discussions about AI and the impact on the workforce. Quantum will have an exponential impact on the workforce, and we need to be prepared for that. So I believe that more degree-based programs coming out of our colleges and universities to prepare our workforce so that we have a quantum-ready workforce. And if we have a quantum-ready workforce, we'll also have an AI-ready workforce. So I think it starts at the colleges, universities. What we've done here in the state is we've dug a little bit deeper and gone in at the middle school level. I think exposure is very important because unfortunately, a lot of learning happens in an individual fear-based sort of cocoon. And if we can introduce folks to quantum early on, when they get to the colleges and universities, they will engage with these courses and prepare the workforce that we need for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Exciting them early, I think, becomes really valuable. So maybe I'll actually switch to Sam to highlight some ways that K through 12 systems could start incorporating STEM and quantum learning. I know you've mentioned a few of the things that you've done, but how can they do it despite kind of lacking some of the fully developed infrastructure or funding?
Thanks for that question. I think that when we think about K through 12, it's important to think about it in terms of grade bands, if you will, because the strategy or the approach, what might be most supportive or move the space forward the most might look a little bit different at different grade bands. And so in particular, the STEM teacher externship is really valuable for teachers across K through 12, but in particular, I have unofficial data, right? So we'd have to check with Kelly to get concrete numbers, but my perception is that that is typically your secondary teachers because they're very curious about the content and how it can be incorporated. They want that really career connected lens. And so I think that's a great strategy there. And I think that also extends down to middle school. So when I say secondary, I typically am referring to 6 through 12. I think that in elementary, at least in Colorado, because of some of the other landscape things around literacy and math, which are very crucial and important, I think that the focus or I guess the strategy has to be a little different. And so what we're working to do, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is to really take an interdisciplinary approach and sort of through this lens of rich assessment and assessment literacy. And when I say assessment, I don't mean just, a test at the end of the unit. We're talking about rich performance tasks where students can engage over, maybe many class periods working towards some kind of problem-based goal, right? It can look very different depending on the teacher and the classroom, but in that way, we're really focused on strengthening those conceptual pieces, those fundamental pieces that will help students be successful, whether it's in STEM, quantum, or whatever the case is. So whether it's just basic scientific concepts about light, right? These things that are already in the standards and we know that they're important. We're also making sure that we are intentionally incorporating math standards that can act as these foundational building blocks for students as they go through school. And really that's about also meeting teachers where they are, right? Because we know that what K through 5 elementary teachers need looks different. And I would say that the other element that we're working on, hopefully will be ready in the next few weeks, is just general guidance around sort of logical latch points across the STEM standards in our state for K through 12. So we're going through our computer science standards, our math standards, our science standards, and we're creating as much as it can be a user-friendly document where educators, right? We're also thinking about different audiences. Maybe it'll look different if it's for district leaders versus classroom educators, but essentially to provide these latch points, if you will, around where could we incorporate some age-appropriate quantum, right?
Right.
And so we're hoping that will at least get educators started. And then the work really becomes elevating what educators are doing, right? And really finding those champions, those humans who are just so interested in quantum, they're being creative, and they're just eager to share. And we want to lift up those examples. So, in terms of strategies in K through 12, I see it as sort of a toolkit, right? We have to have lots of different ways to engage.
Absolutely. And you mentioned those externships. Are those limited to teachers in Colorado, or could anyone participate?
That's a great question. So my understanding is that because it is a Colorado state law, it is targeted at Colorado teachers. However, if someone is interested in connecting with Kelly to learn more about sort of the back end like statute around the program, I'd be happy to connect you.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's switch gears. We have a few questions from the audience. Maybe you'll start with this one, and if anyone has some thoughts, they can just jump in. How can states effectively balance partnerships across federal, state, private, and industry entities to ensure like long-term growth in this area?
I'll offer my thoughts. I think those partnerships can be leveraged. And Sam, you did a wonderful job answering the last question. I will say that states need to ensure that quantum becomes a part of the DNA of the academic experience, whether it's at the middle school, the college, university level, and partnerships with corporations, that there may be an education process that's needed there. And then from a programmatic standpoint, identify organizations that are embracing quantum and then leverage them. And if they've got an abundance mentality, leverage them to create use cases to share with corporations and federal, state, and local agencies to help them see the value of quantum. In most cases, there's always a first mover, but you may not know that first mover. You just have to figure out who that first mover is, and then identify some fast followers to pick up momentum. So I think that creates a framework for engagement in the creation of an ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any specific policy or funding mechanisms that you might recommend for states to adopt in order to enhance their STEM or quantum readiness? Anything, or maybe a policy that has been like extremely effective in the work that you all have done that has maybe kind of driven some things. I imagine a world where maybe South Carolina borrows something from Colorado that's been really effective.
Well, I will say our mandate with the resources that we got from the state was to engage governmental agencies at the local level, engage industry specifically. For us, we're heavy in logistics, advanced manufacturing, and healthcare, to lean into those industries to, as I said earlier, introduce them to quantum and talk about the possibilities. I've sat in at least a half dozen meetings where we're simply educating academia on the impact of quantum. So I think those policies where the state supports educating the sort of the stakeholders, if you will, I think that's very important.
Anything else to add there?
I have something to add, but my dog is barking and I'm so sorry. So some of the most recent policies that have been implemented, such as I mentioned California today about the California Quantum Initiative, a lot of these things are pretty recent. Even the teacher externship program is pretty new as well. And so I think, and this is something Sam mentioned earlier about building upon what we already have. And so there are several education and outreach initiatives that have already been happening. And so if states can invest into opportunities to amplify those examples, amplify and scale those examples across states, such as I mentioned Sparks, right? That's a mobile quantum laboratory. They've covered tens of thousands of miles across I believe it's Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. But what about the rest of the country, right? We also have the Illinois Quantum Information Science and Technology Center. They have a unique experience called the Lab Escape. And that's a escape room that offers an easy entry point at a low cost. And you don't have to have a science background, right? When we think about people being intimidated by quantum science, as well as the NSF Quantum Leap Challenge Institute for Quantum Sensing for Biophysics and Bioengineering. They expand opportunities for Chicago public schools to engage with quantum concepts via their teacher research experiences and current development. But a lot of these opportunities are dependent on federal funding, right? And so that's why we need states to also invest into the institutionalization. Oh, my country, North Carolina's coming out. And opportunities to be institutionalized, right? And so where they're not just these one-off experiences that you can have based on a targeted time frame, right? Generally, a lot of these grants are 5 years? I think the DOE just renewed a lot of, a few of the quantum information science centers funding like last week or maybe earlier this week. However, what if the DOE didn't invest in that? You know, what would we do? What opportunities wouldn't our public or students have access to if they would not have renewed that funding? And so I don't necessarily have a specific name or example because a lot of these experiences at the state level are pretty new, right? When I think about states investing intentionally into quantum, such as South Carolina, that's rare. I haven't seen another state except Maryland is getting there. But investing $15 million into the development of this organization, those are the unique experiences and organizations that we need to invest in further, right? To ensure these opportunities are accessible and institutionalized.
Very cool. Maybe one follow-up question. How do we help stakeholders see that these opportunities are not just for elite students? And so I think we've talked about engaging rural communities, making sure that we're reaching down through K, but also up through 12. But sometimes we think about these opportunities and it's only like the brightest that are thought about. So how do we kind of expand those opportunities across regions, types of students, and those sorts of things?
I've got a real quick answer to that one. We can't treat, we've got the University of South Carolina, Medical University of South Carolina, Clemson, but we also have Claflin, we've got SC State, we've got some HBCUs here. Those HBCUs don't have the resources that the major colleges and universities have. Those rural communities don't have the resources that some of the urban communities have, right? So as you're developing your quantum program to educate and engage communities, you've got to make sure that you've got the scaffolding to support the diversity of communications that you have. If you've got the scaffolding and you go to a major university, well, they may not need as much of it, right? But if you go to a rural community, you may need more education. You may need more community outreach, and you need to plan to do those things. That should be sort of your base use case. And then that way you can go into all the communities where you believe you need to go, because creating a workforce for quantum, it's not just something for the major cities and urban areas. It's about reaching out to those urban communities and the HBCUs and engaging those folks, because at the end of the day, I hate to use the term rising tide lifts all boats. Quantum will certainly lift all boats much faster than we could imagine. So we need to create the onboarding process for them, if you will.
And then maybe speaking of HBCUs, curious about the roles that HBCUs and MSIs play in this area. What are opportunities for state leaders to enhance their support of these institutions so that they too can be catalysts for workforce growth?
I hate to keep jumping. They just need to let the organizations know that they're open for business.
Mhm.
When they're open for business, really open yourself up for business, because this isn't your standard curriculum. Let folks come in, identify a lead academic, who's going to be on point, and just let this thing evolve. I think in academia, there's a rigidity that prevents these types of new platforms from engaging. So that's all I would say, is just be open and let the folks who know the programs come in and engage.
Yeah, and maybe to add on to something you said earlier, there's recognizing that everyone comes from a different starting point. And so if the idea is some institutions are really taking the lead on building curriculum, how might states provide support for that curriculum training and advancement, right? So making sure you're able to kind of meet institutions and students where they are, I think becomes really important here. Or you rely on one single institution to just create and do all of the building, it doesn't give people a place to kind of follow along or catch up.
And I think that, sorry if I can jump in.
Absolutely.
I think that's a key quality of a lot of the, I guess, national initiatives, is that they're pretty collaborative. When I think about the National Q12 Education Partnership, the individuals who worked on that curriculum and those resources, they span different disciplines, and I believe they're in K-12, as well as Q-STEAM. When you think about for undergraduate curriculum, they're not just situated within, and I'm speaking as a researcher, right, based on my observations, but they don't seem as though they're created in silos. And this work is happening at HBCUs. I think, like I said, I think it's just we need to amplify it, right? I mentioned the HBCU IBM Quantum Center, right? That's an example, and I would love for you to unpack it a little bit more, even though you're the moderator, that features a consortium of HBCUs engaged in this work. And from my understanding, they're standing independently as HBCUs. They're not necessarily connected to a predominantly white institution, but I may be wrong. But based on my understanding, it's based on a consortium of HBCUs. And so they are doing this critical work. I think we just need more opportunities to amplify it and make sure that, I don't know, every time I talk to somebody and I tell them about this project and they say, what is quantum? It's as if, besides probably hearing the word quantum leap, nobody ever knows what I'm talking about. And so when I think about, I'm a proud HBCU alum. I attended North Carolina A&T, and that's probably why I leaned into that example with the Ascend Kai's program. However, I would love that one day, if I walk on that campus, a good number of students will be able to tell me about what's happening, even if they're not involved when it comes to Kai's.
Yeah, absolutely. And since you mentioned the IBM HBCU Quantum Center, it is a consortia of HBCUs that are focused on building both research and education capabilities. A lot of it is grounded in the fact that we wanted to make sure that students were getting meaningful research experience in the space. And so that after kind of experiences at their home institution, they'd be able to do more. And a lot of our approach for STEM is definitely shoot for the stars, land on the moon, or maybe it's the opposite. But even if you don't necessarily end up in a career in quantum, how are we able to progress opportunities in STEM in general? And more than just opportunities, I think excitement. Part of one of the reasons why me and a lot of the people I work with are in science is just that excitement and curiosity. And it's something that I think we should make sure is being passed on to other generations. So maybe to close, I would love to hear from each of the panelists, maybe about one thing they're excited about and one call to action for the audience so that we can make sure we leave them with a little bit of homework. And Herbert, I see you're already off mute, so maybe I'll pick on you first.
Well, now I know the protocol for the next panel. Just stand. I would, what I'm excited about is that we're having the conversation, and the conversation involves a thread that leads to HBCUs. So you mentioned the HBCU consortium. I don't know if all of our HBCUs here in the state are aware of it. I mentioned SC State, Claflin, there's Allen, there's Benedict. I don't know if all of these folks are aware of it. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. And I will say that, it's not about building the first quantum computer. I think it's about building the first quantum ready workforce. I think that's the race that we need to engage in.
Awesome. And any calls to action for the audience?
The calls to action is if you number one, if you don't understand quantum, find a way to understand the basics of quantum and how it could impact what you do today, the work that you're doing today, and then take a minute to introduce your children or your colleagues. And I don't know the age of everyone on this call, but if you are engaged with anyone under the age of 40, introduce them to quantum in some way. I'm a venture capitalist and I'm an evangelist for getting more minorities and women into VC. I feel the same way about quantum. What are you planning to do in the future? Well, have you considered a career in quantum computing, quantum physics? We need to at least make folks aware that there's a path to do something in the space of science that's just not a doctor or a nurse.
Absolutely. Sam, closing thoughts?
Well, first off, thanks for having me here. What I'm really excited about is empowering students, the collaboration that we're seeing across states, across agencies, and ensuring that kids will have economic outcomes that empower them, right? To be full humans and to be active participants in their communities. And I would say that my call to action would be to, we can all, focus in on the work, but stay open-minded, because one of the great things about this is that we don't necessarily know what it's going to look like yet. And that's okay. We just need to continue to make decisions that align with our values and know that we're doing what's best for students.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. McIntyre.
So thanks again for the opportunity to partner with the Hunt Institute. And I'm so appreciative of our panelists and our moderator who agreed to be a part of this conversation. One thing that I'm excited about as a researcher is, even though we've talked about it today in terms of partnerships, as a researcher who's been exploring the partnerships among just as a way to name the different types of partnerships across this ecosystem, I would love to be able to explore the partnerships to understand how do they share different resources, and are there different partnership types that are more effective, as well as building on those partnerships. What are the clear pathways, right? So the different people who are engaging in these research centers and institutes, what was their pathway to get where they are today? So those are some of the things that excite me and that I would love to build upon as I continue in this work. And I guess overall, I feel like there's always a lot to learn. And so this is in general, I guess, if you're interested in this space, I literally just got introduced to quantum probably a year ago, and it was a commission research opportunity, a different way for me to apply my skills in engineering education. And so I'm still learning, as you can probably hear and see. However, if you're curious, just take a leap and explore the different resources that we talked about today. And it seems as though a lot of the kits that have been created for K-12 through 16, they're in spaces where you don't need to know differential equations to do them, right? So just jump in. It's okay. And if you don't like it, like Kayla said, that's okay. It's just about exposure and access. So thank
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today. I know that we are at time. So I'll close just by saying, don't let today be the last time you have this conversation. So with people in the chat, resources, just continue the conversation. I think we're all excited for what comes next. And I will hand it off to Jaleel to close out.
Thank you so much, Kayla. We appreciate that. And thank you again to our exciting and outstanding panelists for such an insightful conversation today. To our audience, thank you also for your engagement, your questions, and more broadly for your ongoing commitment to expanding STEM and quantum pathways for students across the country. We've heard so many examples of things that states are doing, so I encourage you to reach out to us at the Hunt Institute so we can help you explore these a bit more. Likewise, we invite you to explore the resources that we shared in the chat. These came directly from our panelists, so we hope that you'll have time to explore those and reach out to the Hunt Institute or to the panelists to learn more. So with that, we thank you. Here are some of our upcoming webinars on the screen there for you. We hope that you'll register and join us for those. But in the meantime, we hope you have a great afternoon, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you.